Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. And together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, where do we start when America looks very different to how it did just a week ago when you and I last met? It's a very interesting time, isn't it? Because everything that you and I and others in the independent media space had predicted, including, and I suppose the banner is the deconstruction of the administrative state, which is a direct pull from Project 2025 as a document, is happening in real time. And there doesn't seem to be much opposition to it because there are no adults in the room.
Yeah, this is something we talked about last week, right? How, we don't have a Speaker of the House. We don't have a Senate Majority Leader. We don't have a president or even a presidential candidate right now. So we just got a DNC member, chair that not many people know, that we're getting to know. The insiders know who he is, but the general public doesn't. So yeah, there's a leadership vacuum, and that's why we talked about, like, people do need to step up. And, I think when we see the usual, like Schumer, doing his cheerleading thing yesterday, or some of the other old guard, people, and not to be ageist, but, when we keep rolling out in front of the American electorate, 75, 85-year-old people, that's not helping with the younger voters. And a lot of their messaging is old messaging. It's tired. It's not new. And so that's a problem. And I think it could be solved once some of these governors get out there on the campaign trail, hopefully, and start helping candidates in midterm elections. But that's not going to be for another year. So I just think some of these people who want to be president in 2028 need to step out and get out of their states. The Andy Beshears, the Wes Moores, the Gavin Newsom, who's done some of it, and Whitmer up in Michigan, Shapiro. They just got to get onto the national stage a little bit more and get out of their states, because even though that might not be what's in their job description, it's really what's needed right now.
Do you think that everybody in the Democratic leadership thinks that somebody else is dealing with it? It's a little bit when you ask for directions, or we used to in the olden days before sat-nav, and they'd get, someone would give you directions and you'd presume that your partner was listening to the answer because you weren't listening. And then you'd drive off and you'd be like, so where are we going? I don't know. Were you listening? I wasn't listening. No one is taking responsibility for leading this charge. And I think they're just assuming that someone's got this, but actually no one's got this.
I listened to the Project 2025 guys this week in some interviews, Paul Gans and Russ Vought and a few others, and Stephen Miller. And they talked about this week, they talked about how they have been able to do so much so fast and put all this stuff out so quickly because they had a plan. I mean, it was all in writing. They had names of people that were ready to go. They had specific executive orders already typed up and written. They had this plan. And in fact, it was all on the internet. I mean, like, none of this stuff is very much a secret. Was all out there.
Right.
So what Democrats in Congress especially should have been doing over the past couple months is taking a look at those plans and taking them seriously. But I think that what a lot of them did is they just said, oh, this is going to be like politics as usual, where all of this stuff you promised in the campaign, you're not really going to do. You were just saying that for the campaign. But guess what? These people weren't just saying that for the campaign. They were deadly serious. And so, you have all the Democrats now scrambling on how are we going to respond to trying to disband USAID or this or that, when it's like, we should have been getting ready for that the last couple months. So we can't always be reactive and scrambling and playing defense. We have to go on offense. And part of that is anticipating what's coming next. Now, some of this stuff, like yesterday on Gaza, occupying Gaza. You can't anticipate. I mean, that wasn't really so much in the agenda, although Jared Kushner did talk about building condos.
That's right. Even Netanyahu was like, seriously?
Even Trump's own chief of staff had that look of horror. But there are stuff that you have to know is coming that you got to be prepared for.
Yes. It does seem, though, that the political protections have now failed. So we don't have majorities. We are very much minority party. The only option is the court system.
Yeah.
As a lawyer yourself, how robust is the court system to try and block a lot of, there's been some success with birthright citizenship and a few other bits and pieces here and there. But, a lot of the courts are controlled by MAGA judges. So, I mean, that is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Although, we've had 12 of the last 16 years of judicial appointments. So, that's helpful. Obama confirmed a lot of judges, and so did Biden. Biden confirmed a lot of judges. And so got through a lot of judges because we had the Senate as well. So I think that is definitely where a lot of the battle is going to have to be fought, because look, I mean, even today, the House Oversight Committee, we tried to vote to issue a subpoena for Elon Musk, just to have him come before the committee and testify about what he's doing. Now, that is exactly what a House Oversight Committee is supposed to do. But Republicans voted it down by party line vote. So while they were busy subpoenaing every single person that ever met Hunter Biden over the last 20 years and dragging them in front of Congress, who's not even in government, they can't even subpoena the guy who was not elected, who has no background check, who has no oversight, no confirmation hearing. They won't even subpoena him to bring him in to testify. So really, that's where we're at. We can't even get a subpoena issued to a witness to come in front of Congress. So the only thing we can do is file lawsuits. And, I don't know, marching in the streets, I'm not a big protest guy, but I get that a lot of people are, and that's fine. I think it's good to demonstrate. But as far as making anything happen of substance, it's probably going to happen in the courts, and it's going to happen at the ballot box. We have to start preparing for those midterms now, because it's very unlikely we're going to take the Senate back, okay, given the electoral map. But we definitely can take the House back. And if we take the House back, now we control the budget. We control the Oversight Committee. There's a lot we can do if we take the House. Sorry.
That's okay. I know you're very popular. Is it not? I am a big protest guy, by the way, so I'll make up for your shortfall when it comes to public discourse.
Okay.
but my fear is that if Donald Trump and especially Tom Homan, we're going to talk about him a little bit later, have got anything to do with it, they're not going to stand for public discourse. We're going to see a kind of Putin-style response to public protest. Now, I'm not saying that because I want people to be frightened and I'm suggesting they shouldn't do it. But my fear is that in the same way that hearing refused to even hear a debate about subpoenaing Elon Musk, right? They literally were like, no. They talked all over the women. It was very, very weird. That, to me, is the authoritarian style that would very likely guarantee that they would gas protesters, the same stuff that we saw last time Trump was in office.
Take the case of the DOGE committee, right, which I know we're going to talk about. So we know that we didn't know at first who is on this, who's working with inside the White House with Elon Musk. We had no idea for a while.
Children.
He refused to tell us. The White House refused to say how many, who they were, what their budget was. We didn't know anything. We're totally in the dark. It's not transparent in any way. So then a reporter comes out and says it's 6 people between the ages of 19 to 24.
Yeah.
And then someone on social media publishes their names. And Musk went nuts. He said, you've committed a crime. We're going to prosecute you. The DC U.S. attorney appointed by Trump opened up a criminal investigation of the person just for publishing their names. That's it. So you see, not only are they not transparent and refusing to cooperate, they're threatening people who just ask what they're doing.
But it's important that we don't deny that that is fascism.
Absolutely.
That move, because I think Musk's posting was, this is illegal, wasn't it? Under the
This is a
names.
crime.
This is a crime.
Yeah.
So, but it was Musk that instigated that and designated that as a crime. It wasn't the police. It wasn't the courts. It was Musk that designated it a crime, an unelected oligarch bureaucrat.
But if it's just him saying it, but then the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia,
right, and that's my point,
agreed with him and said he was going to investigate it.
But the United States DA would not have done that if Musk had not first said,
correct,
this is a crime, and then referred it, right?
Yeah, that's right. He didn't even refer it. He just said it on Twitter.
Right.
And then Ed Martin responded to him on Twitter that he was going to investigate it. And then he announced the next day that he investigated it. 24 hours later, yesterday, he comes back and he says, I've investigated it and I find that there appears to be evidence that crimes were committed here.
Yeah.
24 hours later. So it starts with just a tweet by Musk, and 24 hours later, you have the U.S. attorney saying, I believe crimes were committed. Like, this is no joke. I mean, it took Merrick Garland, 2 years to appoint a special counsel?
Right.
They're going after people 24 hours later based on a tweet.
But that is the proof that the dictatorship that Trump claimed would be there on day one is fully underway, because this is the kind of experience that people had in Germany in the 1930s. This is like the Stasi, like a kind of secret police. This is as dark as you can imagine. This is the stuff of history, but also the stuff of movies. And this is how America's democracy is currently being run.
Can I say one positive thing? I mean, a silver lining here.
Yes, please,
Okay.
please do.
I mean, now's really, not the time for us to be criticizing each other, for Democrats to be attacked. And there's a lot of it that continues to go on. And, that we needed to have a postmortem in November and December about what happened and all that, but we have to let all that stuff go. It's time to move on and unite.
Yeah. It's
time
really...
to, we don't need the constant, if we'd have done this better in the election, there was a time for that. Now is not the time. Now's the time to come together, and so, but the silver lining I'm going to say is this: you can criticize what the Democrats are doing in Congress to respond to this, or whether they're doing enough or not doing enough. The good thing is, it doesn't appear to me that any of them are afraid. They're not afraid of being arrested. They're not afraid of being persecuted or audited by the IRS or anything. I don't see any Democrat out there afraid to fight back. They're just trying to figure out how to fight back. So that at least is good.
And it's probably worth saying something to that for the rest of us too. Those of us who are not working in government or not in Congress, who are either citizens or bystanders, or even people who just have respect or love for America, who want America to succeed and rather than fall. And that is that a lot of the fear is our own projection. And it's very easy to read all this stuff and hear all this stuff and the purging and the, USAID and all these terrible things, and feel like there is total collapse. But what makes a nation are its citizens, not its leadership. And I'm very much of the opinion that it's people who make America, and rather than one man with an orange face and a red hat.
I mean, if you really know history, study history, it's hard for, I taught history. My degree is in history, all that stuff. I was a history teacher. So whenever I hear people say, speak in absolute terms, I always reference history. I heard a lot of people, the Democratic Party is dead. The Democratic Party is finished. Well, let's not forget, 1865, we just came out of the Civil War. There were no Democrats in Congress, in the House. The Democratic Party was completely on its knees, wiped out, destroyed from the Civil War. Yeah. And within a decade, they were back in power. So, it's no, this is the party of Thomas Jefferson. It's been around for a little while. We've gone through a lot of upheavals. We've gone through world wars, civil rights movements, assassinations of presidents, and somehow we always manage to come back around. Now, this is a unique threat. We haven't dealt with this kind of a situation before of a president trying to be an autocrat. We had something close to it with Richard Nixon, but that was like Trump light,
Yeah.
But it was close. But the difference there is that Richard Nixon's own party was willing to stand up to him when he was wrong, and the Republican Party of today is not willing to do that. And so that's what makes the situation more dangerous. If any of the Republican senators, like for example, voted against some of these Trump nominees, I think we would all feel a little bit better that there was some check on his power. But they obviously aren't willing to do that.
And I suppose the other historical addendum is that dictatorships always fall, and
Correct.
invariably they over leverage their power, and that is what is the cause of their own implosion.
Always.
And I know that we're only a couple of weeks into this administration, and it seems like it's been, because he's done in 2 or 3 weeks, he's done a decade's worth of damage. If he wasn't as nuts as he is, I mean, the fact that people are just handing him executive orders and he's like, well, what's this? Okay. And then he kind of repeats it. He doesn't, like he's reading it for the first time. I mean, that really is my concern, is that the guy at the helm is being used as a useful idiot by the Heritage Foundation, by the authors of Project 2025, by this kind of nationalist movement. And didn't Musk even say last night, I think, Musk was calling for all regulation to be dropped, to deregulate everything. And he said, this is a unique time where we will never have this opportunity again, where we have control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, and that we have to take full advantage of that because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do all this stuff. He knows. He knows. And they all know. And my fear is that, were Republicans always like this? Is this their default, to deconstruct the administrative state?
I've not seen
they've been playing along for
just
long
like
enough.
on the ed, they talk about it, they complain about big government and all that, but no, we've never seen anything like this, with abolishing whole agencies, whole departments, sending out emails to all 2 million federal employees, asking them to resign, including CIA agents,
and air traffic controllers,
dismantling the FBI. Yeah. Now the latest today is that Musk is now redoing all the computer systems for the FAA, he's going to redo all the flight computer simulation stuff. What are we going to have, some 19-year-old kid doing this now? That's the other problem with this, is that they want to replace the administrative state, which they complain about, with what?
Yeah.
With what? With a bunch of 20-year-olds that we don't know anything about them. We don't know who they are. They have no knowledge or education. They might be smart IQ wise. They might be willing to sleep in a cot in the White House and work 20 hours a day. But that doesn't mean I want them to replace the people that are keeping us safe from airline crashes or bus crashes, or keeping buildings from falling down or bridges from collapsing. I mean, or keeping the food supply safe. I mean, now we have to rely on looking like RFK Jr. to keep the food and drugs safe that we consume. Yeah. So no, we've never experienced anything like this before. And, as I keep saying, I don't want to keep saying this, but it is going to get worse.
Yes.
It's going to get much worse.
Yes. I think once these institutions start to collapse, rather than just be shuttered or have lunatics running them, once they actually start to collapse, I mean, the CIA is the news last night, offering buyouts to its entire workforce. I don't even think that Trump knows what the CIA is or does or why it is there. And because he doesn't know, this is the problem with a malignant narcissist in the hot seat, is that he presumes that if he doesn't know, then nobody knows. That is the level of mental illness we're talking about. And so he thinks he can shutter it. Well, there's a reason why there hasn't been any kind of major terrorist attack in the US since 9/11. It's courtesy of agencies like the CIA who foil these things and don't go bragging about it.
And the FBI, who they're going to war with.
Correct.
Who are firing everybody.
Correct.
I mean, they just got a list of 5,000 FBI agents. There's 20,000 agents total.
Yeah.
And were given the name, the DOJ, the new DOJ demanded the names of every agent who ever had anything to do with any January 6th case. That was
they gave them to them.
5,000. That's one out of every 4. Yeah, and they handed the list over.
I know. I couldn't believe that.
Now, what is going to happen to those 5,000 FBI agents? And by the way, if you're a career, let's say I'm a Republican. I'm a Trump supporting FBI. Let's say I voted for Trump, but I was assigned to work on some guy who beat up a cop's case, and I served a subpoena, or I questioned some witnesses or something, or looked at some videos, and now I'm going to be fired. I mean, like, I'm a Republican. Like, I'm a career law enforcement agency. I went through college. This is my dream career. I've worked 15 years at this career. I've got a wife. I've got 3 kids. I've got a kid in college. And you're firing me because what? I interviewed a witness and I was told to do that. Maybe I didn't even want to do it, but I have to do it. It's part of my job.
And you also are in the knowledge that 1,500 Jan 6ers have been pardoned and released back onto the streets.
Yeah.
Some of whom are violent criminals. One has been shot. The other one's been rearrested. I mean, I have
heard them publicly threaten to go after the FBI agents who investigated them and the prosecutors who prosecuted him. And even one said he was going to pay a visit to the judge who sentenced him. So yes, this is what's happening, and it's going to happen across. See, here's the other thing. You know, they're claiming that this buyout thing. So the buyout thing expires tomorrow. Thursday is the day that they gave this deadline. So what it is they will continue. It's probably not even legal, but the way they set this up is it's not really a buyout, because a buyout is not legal. So what they're saying is, you tender your resignation. We'll put you on leave. We'll pay you for 8 months. You don't have to show up to work, and then you're gone. Well, what's the rationale behind this, doing this? Well, what they claim is that they want to shrink the size of government, and that they're not going to replace all these people, that all these people are going to leave. So far, I think it's 20,000 have taken them up on the offer, which is about 1%. Which is much less than they expected. They expected 5 to 10% is what they estimated. So far, it's been 1%, but it could be more by tomorrow. But their stated reason for it is to downsize the government. I don't believe that for a second.
No.
What I believe is that they want to hire and replace. They want to replace all of these people with their own political hacks, because these are the people they can't fire. They're not political appointees. They are civil servants. So the only way to get them to leave is to come up with some bribery scam.
Yes.
And that's what they're doing. So I don't believe for a second that this is about downsizing government. It's about replacing career civil servants with Trump loyalists.
But that was in the first chapter of Project 2025, the document.
It wasn't, though. This goes further. No, what they were talking about, the schedule, was Schedule F employees, which is about 40,000 government employees.
Right.
Now, they can replace those people. They have the president has the power to do that. This goes way beyond that. These aren't Schedule F employees. They're putting this out to all 2 million government employees, postal workers, CIA employees, Department of Transportation, FAA. That was not in Schedule F. This goes even further. This is an Elon Musk thing that he has just come up with that was not in anything. They had the schedule. We were all worried about Schedule F, but that was only 40,000 people. This goes to 2 million people. It's a whole different ballgame.
Is it also because they're trying to create a country that is lawless? Because I think of Musk and Trump together as anarchists. without Musk, because I don't think Trump is an anarchist. He's just an idiot. But you add Musk into the equation, and you get this kind of anti-establishment anarchy. And it seems to me that by replacing everybody with loyalists, they're creating a system of governance that protects them from anything that they'll choose to do going forward. Every business deal, there's no oversight. Anything goes, and everything is legal.
Well, he wants the federal government to run like his businesses.
Yeah.
Which is, if you don't work 18 hours a day, grinding, you're out. You're going to be fired. Just like he, ran Twitter, fire everybody, cut everything to the bone, no regulation, fly by the seat of your pants. The problem is when you screw something up with Twitter or, one of your companies, a car blows up or whatever, maybe one person gets hurt or some people get inconvenienced, or you put out false information on Twitter. Who cares? You get community noted. But, when you're running the FAA and you start cutting everything to the bone and people start dying, when you're cutting the FBI and the CIA to the bone, terrorist attacks start happening that weren't happening before. Threats start happening. And who's really sitting back watching all this, loving it is the Kremlin and China.
Right.
I mean, they're just sitting there going, everything that they're doing is presenting a tremendous opportunity to those two countries to exert influence around the globe, because we are taking ourselves out of the space in a lot of these places. And the question is this being done deliberately with that intent? Very, very possible.
I mean, we're going to talk about USAID a little bit later, but it just suggests to me that Trump doesn't understand how the world works, and that, international development is something that we do over long periods of time to bring other nations up to speed, up to standard, so we can use bring in them as immigrants and have them work here and put the United States on a strong footing internationally. Doesn't have any idea that that's even a thing. And so he just saw $50 million worth of condoms going to Gaza and was like, let's just shut the whole program.
Because it benefits us. I mean, we're not just doing this to help other people.
No,
I mean,
of course.
That's part of it. That's part of it. But it benefits us. When we eradicate a disease or measles or something in a small country, we keep it from coming here. That's the point. That's what we're trying to do. When a regime topples and falls, countries like the United States and China step into and let's say it has uranium deposits or valuable mineral deposits in a Central African country, and the government falls. China's going in there and we're going in there, and NGOs associated with both countries are going in there, and we're trying to exert influence. And in most cases, the people in those countries would rather do business with us than with China. Okay. And so if we're there and China's there, typically they roll with us. But if we're not there, who's going to go in there? The only one who's willing to help them, China. They're setting up the hospitals. They're setting up the schools. They're handing out medicine, not us. So guess what's going to happen to the uranium and the mineral deposits and all the stuff in the country that, we might want, to buy from them? It's not going to come to us. And that's the problem. It's just, it's not looking at things from a long-term perspective. It's looking at things like foreign aid, we don't want that. So we're going to do away with all of it, even though it's a tiny percentage of our budget.
Well, USAID is 0.63% of the federal budget, going to basically eradicate poverty in nations where children would otherwise die. And because Trump doesn't have a conscience,
what else we do?
We
help run elections. USAID helps run elections.
Right.
Keeps them clean, keeps them from corruption. We handle the ballot boxes. We help count the ballots for some of these countries where there's corruption. So we make sure that democracy happens. And again, this is stuff that Elon Musk wants to do away with. And it's not Trump, like you said. Trump doesn't even know what USAID is.
Yeah.
This is a Elon Musk operation, and a Stephen Miller, we cannot forget, because they are working hand in glove together every single day, the two of them.
And just to prove your point, here's Trump, and I'm sorry that I'm having to play Trump, but, give me a few seconds here. Basically suggesting that it was Elon Musk that discovered that the USAID was corrupt, and he just let him run with it.
Doesn't seem to work.
Secretary. Thank you, sir. On Elon Musk, how often are you talking to him? And have there been ideas that he's brought to you that you've said, oh, no, wait a minute, this is going a little too far?
Well, many ideas, but look, he's done a great job. Look at all the fraud that he's found in this USAID. It's a disaster what the people, radical left lunatics, they have things that nobody would have even believed. The whole thing with $100 million spent on you know what, with money going to all sorts of groups that shouldn't deserve to get any money. With the money, I'd like to see what the kickbacks are. How much money has been kicked back? Who would spend that kind of money to some of the things that you read about and I read about and I see every night on the news and every morning when I read the papers? Who would spend money for that? I would say this, the people that got all that money, are they kicking it back to the people that gave it from government? No, that's, to me, very, very corrupt. The real question is, how much of a kickback has there been? And one of the things I want to investigate rapidly, because I've never seen anything to this extent.
The cynicism about the fact that there must be corruption is projection. He's the one who would never make a charitable donation unless there was a kickback or a tax break. He cannot conceptualize the idea that a nation would be generous to poorer countries to benefit itself and that country in the long run.
Yeah,
it's not in his wheelhouse.
Everything is transactional. We
Right.
see this with the tariffs. You got to give him something, and everything with him is you got to get something in return for me. What are you going to do for me, right? There's never like, we're going to spend this money to eradicate AIDS in this country or polio or whatever, just because it's the right thing to do. No, because we have the resources and the knowledge and the know-how to do it. No, he doesn't think like that. But a couple points here. Number one, 2 years ago in the Senate, a senator named Marco Rubio, who is now, they're putting USAID underneath his jurisdiction, right? That's the latest news.
Yes.
Called for more money to go to USA. He called for an increase in USAID's budget 2 years ago on the floor of the Senate. Now USAID is corrupt. Okay, if it was corrupt, why was your Secretary of State asking that they should get more money 2 years ago? This is all nonsense. Now, that's point number one. My other point is this. Look, anytime that you're spending, I think their budget is like, I don't know, 900 billion or something like that. 900 million. It's not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Not even anything like 1% of our defense budget. So when you're spreading that money all around the globe to thousands of different international non-governmental organizations, charity, because not all of this is U.S. government employees. We don't have U.S. government employees all over the world doing this work. We're paying NGOs in country to do these things. There's always going to be some level of grift, kickbacks. Of course, it's going to happen.
But it's minimal.
But it's a small percentage.
Yeah.
But they're going to do with this exactly what they did with migrant crime. They're going to find every little thing. Oh, we spent $1 million on, to eradicate a mosquito in the Congo. And they're going to make a big deal out of it. And they're going to demagogue it. And those are going to run on Fox News 24/7, just like they did trying to claim we spent 500 million in condoms in Gaza. They're going to do things like that. And it's going to try and turn public opinion against USAID. Now, the other thing is the Democrats have just spent 2 whole days defending USAID. And my comment to the guys was, we're fighting on ground of the Republicans choosing, because if we're going to spend the next couple of months defending foreign aid, that's not a very popular position to be in. We need to push back on this. We need to fight this, but we don't need to spend all of our time on this, because There's a lot of other things happening. I'm talking about not us, the Democrats,
But also these things can be reversed. So whilst he is, claimed to have shuttered USAID, and 10,000 people work for this organization.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it has plunged a lot of these countries that are reliant on USAID into a temporary chaos. The courts and a change of government can reverse that, and probably will at some point in the future, because it's so completely insane. The other thing is, as we touched on earlier, that China will step in to these places where the US has retreated. And that gives China dominance in regions that the US previously controlled.
Yeah, because Russia, because of the Ukraine war, can't do it right now. They just don't have the resources. It used to be a three-way game between us, the Russians, and the Chinese. The Russians are pretty much out of this game right now while the war is going on. But China is very active in Africa, throughout Asia, and even in South America and Central America. And they would love nothing better than to step into these areas and to push us out. And we don't have military in these places. The only thing we have is USAID, is our people on the ground and all. So if we're going to pull everyone out, disband this agency, we now have no presence throughout the globe. The only presence we have are our military bases. That's basic, in our embassies. That's it. The United States basically retreats from the world, the most dominant, most influential country in the world throughout the globe is going to completely pull back from it. And, a lot of the Democrats made a good point. It's like, for every dollar you spend on USAID, you probably save 10 on the defense budget.
Yeah.
Because so many fires are being put out, on the front end by USAID that if they didn't get put out, we might end up using our military. And that's going to cost a hell of a lot more and cause a hell of a lot more problems than, a little foreign aid.
And the response from the United Nations and from the international community has been abhorrent. They are incensed by this. And what does it do for respect for America on the world stage? How does America's standing internationally change because Trump is so xenophobic and this America First thing, which is a phrase from the 1930s, for goodness sake? It's like they could not be clearer about their view. I mean, I heard Trump talking about, on the immigration subject, talking about getting rid of American citizens out of jails who reoffend, and he referred to them twice in the same sentence as animals. Get these animals out, which is a racial dog whistle. And he now, because of the power that he wields, has no qualms about telling us who he really is.
Yeah, exactly right. But, the way it sounds like, the way he looks at it is like, I'm going to ship violent criminals out of the country. Well, you know what? And the Democrats are like, you can't do that. That violates this statute and this case law. Well, when we're talking about an election, I'd rather be the guy running on, I'm sending violent criminals out of the country than, no, you can't do that. I mean,
the fact that it's illegal is irrelevant to him.
Exactly. This is the point. If you only care about like winning elections and you don't care whether it's legal, constitutional, or anything else, you only care about, and that's what a populist is.
Yes.
They only care about taking the position that the majority of people will agree with you on. Again, the majority of Americans aren't entirely thrilled with foreign aid. And if you can dangle in front of them a couple of examples of corruption associated with the foreign aid, then that's going to turn even more of them against it. And, Democrats only have these legal arguments and these constitutional arguments and separation of powers arguments to rebut them with, when, they've got to do a better job making the case. And I think on USAID, they have, making the case of why it is important, what it does, all of that. But again, when you're talking about, hey, I'm going to deport all U.S. violent criminals to El Salvador, a lot of Americans are going to go, oh, that sounds good to me,
what's different this time around, and we were prepared for it, but I don't think we were quite prepared for how it has played out, is by staffing the White House completely with loyalists. So whereas before, as we've discussed previously, we had Mark Milley, or we had John Kelly, or we had people who had experience in the world, certainly through the military and understood international law, to say to Trump, you just can't do that. And Trump would be like, oh, I can't? Oh, okay, fine. And then move on to something else with his short attention span. This time, there is nobody. They have made sure that there isn't a single person who has an opposing view or indeed an understanding of international procedures, protocols.
Yeah, Reince Priebus, who was the chief of staff, who's like as establishment buttoned down as you can get.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller at the last administration was like a junior speechwriter in the corner. He had no authority whatsoever. Now he's the policy director. He's running the show. Obviously, there's no Elon Musk. Speaker of the House was Paul Ryan, who said no to Donald Trump constantly, and so that's all gone. It's all gone. Instead of Paul Ryan, you have Mike Johnson. Instead of Reince Priebus, you've got Stephen Miller and Elon Musk. Instead of him and
Beatty.
John Kelly.
Who's this? Who's this guy, Darren Beatty, who posted? He's this new State Department spokesperson who posted, competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men. I mean,
so you look at the date. That's 4 months ago. Right. It's not some like 10-year-old thing he said in college. So Darren Beatty is the editor of Revolver News, which is a right-wing, news publication. Darren Beatty, he is now the new spokesperson for the State Department.
Yeah.
So he now is directly under Marco Rubio in the State Department, and he speaks for the United States to the world on foreign policy, right? So how did he get this? How did he get this job? Well, first of all, he was in the previous Trump administration, was fired. He was fired for associating with white nationalist Nazi groups. Then, how did he get up off the couch and revive his career? Well, in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, when even Republicans in Congress were condemning most of them were condemning the J6ers and condemning Trump and all that publicly. Even though they wouldn't vote to impeach, they still said he was wrong and all this stuff. Darren Beatty was the only one of the few who stepped into the breach and said, no, I think this was FBI. He is the one who created the conspiracy that FBI agents were involved in the insurrection. He created the Ray Epps conspiracy, identifying a random person in the crowd, said, this is the guy. This is an FBI undercover, just completely made up an alternative and spent the next 2 years straight. He created a conspiracy that Kamala Harris was behind the pipe bomber.
Yes.
He did nothing for 2 years. That's all he did all day. He was on every podcast, every talk show, spinning an alternative history of how J6 went down. And eventually, a lot of his conspiracies were latched onto by members of Congress who started repeating them. Marge Green, Ron Johnson, etc. And this got the attention of Trump because it was successful. Darren Beatty's conspiracies, along with Trump and Republican members of Congress who latched onto them, were able to convince a huge chunk of the American public, probably 40%, that this was an inside job by the FBI. Okay. And Trump, that was very, very valuable for Trump in this election. So this is Trump basically paying this guy back for authoring the alternative history of J6. So now this white nationalist, white supremacist who said all this horrible stuff, there's post after post you can find of him on social media saying racist stuff, crazy stuff. In fact, he said that the CIA was behind the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. He said that was the CIA. So this is who this guy is. Now he's one of the most senior officials in the State Department.
And I was going to say that Kash Patel is very much a conspiracist of that genre.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's going to be running the FBI.
But but Kash and those other guys didn't come up with these conspiracies.
They just
because you have to have the person who creates them. And, it's people like Alex Jones and Darren Beatty who are the people who cook these things up in their twisted minds. They just invent these conspiracies. So where Kash Patel would be the second line of that equation, which is the person who goes out and spreads those conspiracies. But Beatty is considered like the quote unquote intellectual behind all of this alternative history. Him and somebody named Julie Kelly are really the ones who created most of the J6 conspiracies, and all the other ones just ran with the work that they did.
And it's convenient that Elon Musk, with his support of the AfD in Germany, is clearly a white nationalist as well, aside from his salute.
That election is like next week,
right?
I think.
And he's putting again huge funding into supporting this far right nationalist party, this kind of Nazi sympathizing party, to try and get them elected in Germany. And I just want to show this letter. I was going to show it earlier about DOGE, but this is another example of how there are people in the government now who are playing along. This comes from the Department of Justice. This is the U.S. attorney or acting attorney, right? Saying it was good to work with DOGE. We must keep all our American government employees safe. We must protect the American people's property. Anyone imperiling others or violating our laws. I recognize that some of the staff at DOGE have been targeted publicly. I can assure you we'll pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work. This is a letter he wrote to Elon Musk. And this is the point that I want to make here, is that there is no opposition to any of this craziness, this racism, this abusive takedown of American culture and the system of governance on the inside. It's all external. It's all going to be Democrats and the courts or individuals like Mark Elias and Democracy Docket and any of these groups that are actually coming together and putting lawsuits together. But on the inside, it's an inside job. Everybody is protecting everybody.
Yeah. I mean, so you have the chief law enforcement officer for the District of Columbia who said, like, you look at the wording of that letter, it says confrontations. So it's not just threats. You look at the second paragraph there, the last line. It says any threats. Okay, threats, that's not right. Okay, we all agree with that. But then read on. Confrontations or other actions that in any way impact their work may break numerous laws. So anything that causes them consternation, stresses them out, scrutinizes them, could be a crime, and you may be prosecuted if you criticize them or go after them or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So let's say a reporter, now that we have the names of these 6 people that are working for him, let's say the reporter starts digging into these 6 people, and reporters all over the country are doing that as we speak. They got the names and they're digging into their back. So let's say a political reporter, a CNN reporter, does a big story next week on one of these guys, and turns out that this guy belonged to a bunch of Nazi organizations or beat his girlfriend or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure I think they're all male, of course. They're all young men. And so is this guy, the U.S. attorney, going to prosecute that reporter? Are they going to lock that person up? That's basically what he's saying.
And that's my fear about public demonstration, is that if that's their attitude on the inside, then the external attitude when it comes to people demonstrating and publicly protesting is going to be just as tough.
Musk posted when the Democrats went inside the USAID building, he posted, "This is an insurrection.
Yeah.
Why aren't these people being arrested?"
Yeah.
And because he was equating it to January 6th, but the difference is there weren't any cops there trying to tell people not to come in. They didn't have to beat up police to get into the building. They just walked in. But you see the point. The point is he's sending the signal right there, like, hey, these people should be arrested.
So much for the free speech absolutist.
Yeah.
What happened to that guy?
That's long gone.
That's ancient history. All right, listen, we have to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Trump's takeover of Gaza. He's going to turn it into the Trump hotel and suites. All that to look forward to next here on Uncovered. Don't you wish you had a secret weapon? Something that always impresses, a recipe maybe, or even a piece of clothing? Well, a secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life, and that is how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing. As a secret weapon. Timeless, classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. I love my Ace full-zip hooded sweatshirt in a charcoal heather grey. It keeps me warm, makes me feel more confident, because it's quality clothing. Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. Not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. Looking to take charge of your life with full mental clarity this new year? Enhance your sober January and embrace CBD Awareness Month with VIA to experience the powerful benefits of hemp without the high. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, VIA is the Swiss Army knife of wellness, dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. VIA's collection of THC-free products combines minor cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, and CBN with botanical supplements for targeted effects that you can actually feel, whether you're looking to improve your sleep, your focus, or relief. VIA has something for you. VIA is also well-renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THCA flower, soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And this is the best part. VIA legally ships to nearly all states in the US in discreet packaging, delivered directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee, no medical card required. So, if you're 21 plus, check out our link to VIA's website in our description and use code UNCOVERED for 15% off. And if you're new to VIA, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. This year, enhance your everyday with VIA. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below.
I'm wearing my Mack Weldon shirt right now.
I am wearing my Mack Weldon t-shirt, my friend. I mean, we're right there, marinating in sponsorship. Okay, listen, we need to talk about what's going on with Trump wanting to buy Gaza or steal Gaza or borrow Gaza. I mean, this is one of the freaking worst things and weirdest things I have ever seen. And I thought it was just me. And then I started reading online. Not a single person thought that they were living in reality. People thought that maybe Musk had got into our brains because this couldn't even be real. And yet it happened. He actually said these things. What are we supposed to do when the level of insanity from the president becomes, at peak insanity, that you just have to kind of sit by and go, okay, I suppose this is it now, isn't it?
I think we joked on the show last week that nothing he does shocks us anymore.
Right.
And okay, well, spoke too soon. This one surprised me because I think it surprised everybody. I think it surprised. There's two theories that people have. Either he went way too far with what he said, or he wasn't supposed to say that out loud, that this was some secret plan that him and Netanyahu came up with. Because look, they've had a lot of meetings over the last year.
Yeah.
Since October, since the October incident, the attack.
Yes.
Netanyahu has been meeting with Trump on a regular basis. He's gone to Mar-a-Lago like 3-4 times. So obviously they've been discussing something, and they met multiple times since the election. So the question is, what is it? And I think everybody just always assumed it was, providing aid for Israel and weapons and all that.
Or withholding the ceasefire till after the election was one of the things that we were
sure.
Yeah.
But no one, I think, expected him to say, and I think the look of surprise on Netanyahu's face, on Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles' face, on Republicans in Congress today who are being asked about it and who are just like, I don't know about all that. Even Lindsey Graham was like, what did he say? Like they were blindsided.
Yeah.
And this is not what the MAGA movement wants. I mean, you're going to have a tiny handful of his paid influencers on social media talking it up, your Charlie Kirks and stuff.
Yeah.
But
this is not America.
It's a tiny
first.
Like 90% of the Republican Party does not want this, and he's talking about taking all of the people. What is it? 2 million people in Gaza, 2.2 million.
Yeah,
and displacing them to go to put them in Egypt or some Jordan.
Egypt and Jordan. Yeah,
those countries do not want the Palestinians in their country, understandably. And number two, they want Gaza to be an independent Palestinian state, and said that they will not negotiate with Israel on any other terms unless that's the premise of the deal. So the idea of like the U.S. is going to forcibly remove these people, then he said, we are going to take it over. We're going to have a long-term ownership position in Gaza. That's what he said. Like it's a real estate deal. What is it going to take? It's going to take if we go in there and we build buildings or anything in there, it's going to take a massive amount of United States military to protect that, because it is going to be target one for terrorist attacks from all over the world. They're going to go after whatever we have in Gaza. They're going after it. Everyone, Iran, Iraq, every Arab nation in the world and every terrorist group in the world is going to go after whatever we build there.
Well, anytime they build a building,
massive. Not only that, they're going to attack us here.
Yes.
We are going to have terrorist attacks in the United States because of this reason. I mean, this is more of a reason to launch terrorist attacks in the United States than Osama bin Laden ever had.
I know.
Justification for.
Ron, this is why you don't put a former realtor, reality TV host into the presidency. You just don't do it. There are reasons why it's never been done before. Now, I appreciate that Ronald Reagan was a movie actor,
a psychopath in the White House.
A psychopath, and maybe that's the difference. And maybe Reagan was not quite a psychopath; he was just an actor. But I feel like we are starting to see what it means to have somebody who is also. Don't forget, Trump is suffering dementia as well as his other mental health issues, and that he is decomposing before our very eyes. I think
Correct.
Ben described it on the Midas Touch podcast as his brain is turning to mush. And you can hear it. His speech is like a child. I mean, I have a 6-year-old, and the way that my son talks is the same way that Trump talks, with small words, a lot of repetition, never expanding on a subject or bringing references or evidence,
rambling,
and right. And so we have got used to the fact that Trump talks like this, but he literally has the vocabulary and the syntax of a first grader. And this is the man that is in charge of the free world. Let's just take a look at the clip so people can see what we're talking about.
Yep.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, It's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
Who are the people of the area, Ron?
That's it.
Who
That's
are
the
those
operative
people?
phrase.
Yeah.
He said, we're going to make it all beautiful. We're going to put all this money in there for, and then he hesitated and said,
Right.
the people of the area. He ain't talking about the Gazans. He's not talking about Palestinians.
No,
he's
Arabs,
talking about Israel.
Israelis.
He's talking about handing it over to Israel, which would start a regional conflict. The whole Middle East would burn if that happened. I mean, Netanyahu has to know this. Even he has to know that this is a bridge too far. So, then, we have people like Dan Goldman, who I like, who I respect, Democratic congressman from New York, probably going to succeed Schumer, maybe a senator at some point. Okay. Rising star, Levi Strauss heir, all that, lots of cash, good stuff. But he said, he used that word like this is a distraction. Trump's not really going to do this. This is just words. Don't pay attention to his words. Pay attention to his deeds. Why? I get a little bit of that sentiment, but at the same time, a president saying this has huge implications. The Saudi government at 4 a.m. Saudi time scrambled and issued a statement. They weren't up and working at that time, but they got up to issue a statement denouncing this. And the Saudis love Donald Trump. So this is not a small thing. The Jordanian and Egyptian government said, we are not taking Palestinians.
The Qataris, who are the ones negotiating the hostage transfers, they're the ones suddenly thinking, is this going to upend the hostage situation and the ceasefire?
Right.
But what Trump has done here is he might have helped Netanyahu out of a tricky spot, because Netanyahu does not advocate for a two-state solution. He never has. And remember, his government is a far-right government, and so he's having to kind of play this game. He's also, the International Criminal Court wants him for genocide. He's wanted for corruption in his own country. So the guy's playing a bit of a tightrope, and here you have the president of the United States going, here, I've got a good idea, because all Trump knows is being a second-rate realtor, is we're gonna give you this housing development. And I think the phrase he uses, we're going to turn it into the Riviera, or a Riviera.
Yeah.
This is useful. This is why Netanyahu didn't say anything, because this actually gets him closer to his dream of it remaining under Israeli control and not giving anything to the Palestinians.
Yeah, but I mean, the most concerning thing about it is Trump didn't say like, we're going to hand it over to Israel. That would be a problem in and of itself. He said, we, the United States, are going to take an ownership position
with Israel. The policy of the
United States jointly own Gaza. What, Gaza is going to be like our 52nd state after Canada now?
After Canada, yeah, I was going to say that. Apparently,
it's just madness. There's no one in this country who wants to go into Gaza except for Donald Trump.
Well,
and Jared Kushner.
There is one person, and this is what I wanted to say, because there's an old article floating around that Jared Kushner put this into Donald Trump's mind a couple of years ago, and said, you do realize that this is prime real estate, that the Israelis have got plenty of money, and if we were to build here, this would be great for business. This is Donald Trump as the president of the Trump Organization talking, not as president of the United States.
But because he doesn't know history and he doesn't know anything about the region, but he thinks he does, he doesn't think about the people involved. Like, he doesn't think about the surrounding nations and how they would react. And maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he just thinks, oh, we're more powerful than them. We'll crush them. We don't need to worry about Egypt, Jordan, Saudi. Oh, OPEC can cut oil production. There's a lot of stuff that they can do to retaliate, not the least of which is terrorist attacks on our soil.
Yeah.
So, state sponsored even, which could be the case. So, I mean, everything that we've done, all the blood that was spilled in Iraq and Afghanistan to combat the global war on terror could all be undone by this move. And we could be in a worse place than we were 25 years ago before we spent all those billions of dollars in those places. It's just, it's insanity. It really is. This is the craziest thing he's done yet of all the things since he's taken office, I think. If he intends to actually follow through with it. And, so many people keep saying, oh, he's bluffing, he doesn't really mean it. Well, How do we know what he's bluffing and what he's serious about? We really don't know.
I can only imagine that this is what it must have felt like in 1930s Germany, where
Sure.
the rise of Hitler, who is erratic and is a populist and a people pleaser, and spins them this whole yarn, and then goes and invades Poland.
Well, we know that there were many German generals and politicians who were against those
right
things, who said, like, I think this is going to be a disaster. This is not going to work out. I mean, eventually, though, that stuff kind of went away and went down, but there were people expressing concern inside the German government at that time.
Yes.
So yeah, it's the same thing now. It's like, it's just a madman. And I don't think we have the luxury to do what Dan Goldman suggested and just ignore this. Oh, he's just making noise. This is just a distraction. Well, how do you know? How do you know? Can you read his mind?
American exceptionalism is one of my favorite topics. I've read more books on it, and I think about it so much because as a European with this new perspective, and Trump seems to think that America is going to be respected whatever it does. He doesn't realize that its rating is dropping. Not least so are the markets, world markets, because of this as well. And that's something that's going to make him change his tune. But so by threatening nations, I mean, he did it with Iran. He was threatening Iran, and I think he is a warmonger. I think he, claimed there was no war under me, which is actually factually inaccurate, or no new wars under me, he said. But he is a warmonger. He is looking for a war. In fact, we've got this clip of him talking about, being assassinated and how he has a plan in place if he is to go and blow the living daylights out of Iran. Let's take a look.
It's Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani.
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do. Not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That'd be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why, lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran. So I'm sorry.
He uses the word obliteration with such relish, and that is very worrying to me.
Yeah, I mean, think about how crazy that statement is. It's just like, first of all, there's no reason to say anything like that, but
No.
You're telling a country, you're almost begging for a problem. You're like saber rattling. You're saying, if they try to assassinate me, I'm going to wipe their work. No, after I'm dead, I left instructions. So after I'm dead, my successor, JD Vance, I guess, is going to nuke. What are we going to nuke Iran? We're going to nuke it. We're going to wipe. What's the population of Iran? I don't even know. It's in the tens of millions. We are going to destroy and start World War III, a nuclear war, if you try to assassinate me, because it's not going to just end in Iran. That's a regional conflict that will start a world war. So that's just an absolutely insane statement to make. And not only that, he's making that statement at the same time he just ordered the security details to be pulled from Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and Mark Esper, all of whom had those details because they have had assassination attempts credible from Iran. So he's saying, if you try to assassinate me, we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. One of the most ancient civilizations in the history of the world, one of the first, right? The Persian Empire. We're going to wipe them off the face of the earth if you assassinate me. But at the same time, I'm taking away the security details of all the U.S. government officials that Iran has been threatening over the last few years. Insanity.
We should probably mention the tariffs, because these might just seem like they're financial or economic sanctions, but they're not. They go beyond that. They do cause friction amongst nations. And what he's been saying, by taking aim at our closest allies in Canada and Mexico, who we share a land border with, and then extending that, threatening the European Union as well, as he has in the last week, it is nuts. I mean, it's almost as if he does it on the fly. He thinks of the number whilst he's on camera. 25%. Does it like on camera. It's like when he thought of Space Force on camera, and the next thing you know, it had been done. This is how he's choosing to threaten people. He did it with Colombia last week as well, about those planes not landings. Well, we'll just throw tariffs on you, and then Colombia concedes. They just actually didn't want people being brought in military aircraft, tied, gagged, and bound just for being immigrants. But Donald Trump has made a gigantic fool of himself, and in fact, he's been played by Canada and Mexico in this instance, and has taken credit and is claiming victory when, in fact, these nations are clearly much smarter than he is. Let's take a quick look at this coverage.
It's ravaged hometowns. Everyone understands the fentanyl crisis. But one, the amount of fentanyl that comes from Canada is nowhere near the scale of the southern border. A lot of it comes through legal ports of entry. But on this specifically, he called this off, saying that he had won concessions from both of them. But is there a tangible concession in your view?
Yeah, absolutely. He won the concessions, and part of it is it's a commitment from Trudeau that wasn't there to help with fentanyl, to help with the black market.
Well, he announced the plan
and to secure the border.
He announced that plan though 6 weeks ago, back in December.
Well, at least he's reiterated it and formalized it, and
he reiterated it.
At least he's reiterated it and formalized it.
Here's what really happened. There's no. It's obvious what happened here. He comes out with this threat, and he was going to go through with this. There was no question about it.
Yeah.
He thought that he was going to be the big man and show them who's boss. And look, he did not expect, I believe he did not expect the pushback that he got, because from Canada, from Mexico, and from his own party, and from the markets, who he does listen to, the billionaire investors on Wall Street. Those are people he actually listens to. And they were all freaking the hell out. They were panicked. And the market futures he announced this on Saturday, the Dow futures went in the toilet.
Yeah.
NASDAQ, everything went in the toilet. Stock market opens down. And what else do you have? You have Canada announcing a huge amount of tariffs and you had Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa saying, we buy all our fertilizer from Canada. And you had Collins up in Maine, we buy all our heating oil from Canada. And it's like all these people in states that are Republican elected officials are saying, we don't want. Rand Paul came out against it. Ron Johnson came out against the tariffs. These are not liberals, right? These are Trump's closest friends and allies that were freaking the hell out on Saturday and Sunday. And Canada, look, and Mexico, they have the answer to their own people. And the retaliation that they put was targeted specifically at industries in Republican states, which was ingenious on their part. So what you had was then Trump trying to figure out, how can I save face here? How can I declare victory? And so they come out, and Sheinbaum says, we'll send 10,000 troops to the border. She promised to send 10,000 troops to the border when Biden was president.
That's right.
They said that they would send 10,000 troops to the border when Trump was president last time. This is something that they always say. Every time they get threatened with something, they say, we'll send troops to the border. Well, how do we know if they're sending anybody there? I mean, there was already troops there. Trudeau, what did he? Well, we'll create a fentanyl czar. Well, what the hell is that? Who's the fentanyl czar? What's he going to do? Like, even Laura Ingraham on Fox is saying, Canada gave up nothing. So what this tells every country on earth right now is all we have to do is pretend, let him declare victory and pretend we gave him something and he'll go away, which means we have no leverage with any country right now. If he tries to do this to the EU, they'll just laugh at him. I mean, China is laughing at him right now. They're not giving him anything.
This is the proof that Trump doesn't read. He doesn't have any knowledge of any policy in advance of him removing it, changing it, or threatening it. So it's all just hearsay. It's more likely people that he plays golf with who say, "Oh, did you hear that this has happened?" And he's like, "Really?" And then that becomes the policy of the United States.
There's nothing Canada has that we want.
Yeah.
Actually, he heard from people on Wall Street and Republicans in Congress who said that is not, in fact, the case.
Yeah. If I hear him say lumber one more time, I may scream. Have you noticed how he loves it because he thinks it's a word that isn't outside the realms of his usual vocabulary?
Yeah. Maybe you guys never heard of this. There's stuff called lumber.
Right.
It comes from trees.
Right.
Trees that are cut and they make houses with it. Yeah, that's classic Trump.
Classic. But that's the level of intellect that we're dealing with. That's the level of transparency. And Sheinbaum started all this off. She knew from the beginning that he was, a fool, and she took advantage of that. And so she knows how to play him. He also said, I think in that earlier clip when he was talking about USAID, that he reads the papers and he watches the TV. Yeah. So it's as if he's only getting his information, right, not from briefing documents or from policy documents or any of this stuff.
Getting it from Sean Hannity.
He's watching
Fox and Friends.
He's watching Fox. That's where he heard the thing about the $50 million worth of condoms, which then became 100 million, which in reality is 0. And he is running the country based on he only looks at the newspaper to see if he's in it. Doesn't read anything. Would never commit to an article.
He doesn't
just
read
likes
a
to
newspaper.
see. Michael Cohen said this. He likes to see if his name is above the fold.
They give him, they feed him clippings that are about him.
Yeah.
That Natalie Harp does that. He doesn't actually read a newspaper. She hands him a few clippings with sections highlighted. That's the extent of his reading.
Let's just talk for a second about California, because he keeps saying that, we gave them the water. We gave them the water. And I'm going to play a quick clip, which is very interesting because he makes a reference to, you probably saw the pictures, he said. Now, in his mind, he imagines this huge dam being opened, I guess, like the Dam Busters, and this gushing water all coming down the hill and solving, the water crisis or the water shortage that doesn't exist in California to put out the fires. Now, there were no pictures of this, but what he's now doing is he's lying about whether there's photographic evidence and just saying, well, you've seen the pictures. And I found this to be particularly interesting because his false reality, now that he's president, he can just run with that and make people assume that, well, if they haven't seen the pictures, that they're missing out. Let's take a look.
Rick Grinnell, to be your envoy for special missions.
I sent him to California to turn on the water. We turned it on. It was not easy because we had to go through a lot of environmentalists that are causing a lot of problems. And we have billions of gallons of water. It was on 3 days ago. You probably saw it. Should have gotten a lot of press, but it didn't get much. All we're doing is giving Los Angeles and the entire state of California virtually unlimited water, which they could have done 5 years ago, which I told them they should do, but the environmentalists stopped them. And we opened it and we did it regardless of the state. And now the state seems to be very happy. I spoke with Gavin Newsom and he's very happy. I almost called him by the other name, my little nickname for him. But I think they're all happy. They have a lot of water in California. Too bad we didn't have it about 2 months ago, right?
Mr. President.
That was, by the way, that was a big move. We have, I don't know if you saw the pictures that were released of the water pouring down from the Pacific Northwest and Canada and lots of other places. And it's a pretty amazing sight.
Did you see the pictures of the water coming down from the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, I mean, there were some pictures on the internet, a couple, but of water coming out of a dam. Look, I mean, you live in California, you live in LA. I lived in San Diego for 6 years, so we're familiar with how this works. And California, the rainy season is the winter, right? And reservoirs fill up, and as the snow melts in the Rockies and all that, these reservoirs fill up in Northern California, and they're stored because the dry season is in the summer when it's hot. And this water is not stored to fight fires. It is stored for agriculture, for Central California. Drive up I-5, right through the middle of California. It is 5, 6, 7 hours of farms nonstop. And that's what the water goes to. So what this knucklehead did is right now, none of those farms need water. They don't need the water from the reservoirs.
Yeah, because it's in reserve.
Ordered the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to release the water that is being stored for these people for the summer. Now, just release it. And when he talks about regulations, what he's saying is, whenever they release water from these reservoirs, they notify the farmers ahead of time so they can get their livestock and their tractors and everything else out of the way so it doesn't get destroyed and damaged by this sudden gush of water. You notify people. They did not notify anybody. They just turned it on and released the water. So now a lot of these farmers are saying, well, what's going to happen in the summer?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's saying, like, now they all have, and the fires never would have happened if they had this water. None of this water goes to LA. None of it. It's not for that. It shows you the level of stupidity, but not only of him, but his followers. His followers believe this nonsense. And it's just like any third grader with half a brain can know the truth.
And in the meantime, people's lives and livelihoods are directly affected by this. I think he just assumes that everybody has the same privilege that he does, where you can just buy your way out of a situation, or just, pay your way out of a situation. He doesn't seem to realize that most Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and that 25% of Americans don't have $500 in the bank. And he just is basically running the country like there is an emergency fund where he can just deal with things by dipping his hand into his pocket. Because that's what's going to end up happening, is that the cost of his mistakes is going to be so great, both domestically and internationally, that any cost saving that Elon Musk might find in the federal government is going to pale into insignificance compared to the cost of righting Donald Trump's mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, the climate change, California was much drier when I lived there in the 90s than it is now. Climate change has actually resulted in more water going into California. But let's say they do have a dry season, and those farmers are going to be screaming and yelling. And of course, he'll probably blame Gavin Newsom, at that point. Yeah. He noted that it was very hard for him not to say Newscum, but he decided not to say it this time because Newsom hasn't criticized him in a few days.
But he also said Newsom's very happy. And I was
he's very happy.
Yeah, he's like, well, you're just making that up.
Newsom didn't say a word.
Right. When I last saw Gavin Newsom, he was like face to face with you, like this, poking you in the chest. So again,
but he didn't say a word about this because this is water that's under control of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
These are U.S. government reservoirs. So there's nothing Newsom can do to stop this.
We don't have long left. I want to talk about immigration, though, because Tom Homan, who, as we know, he's like a bouncer on a door. He's like one of these kind of, just, you don't want to pick a fight with this guy. And he's now saying that there's going to be violence at the southern border, and that it's unfortunate, but we suggest that these cartels don't pick a fight with us because they're going to lose. I mean, just again, the kind of language that Trump was using with Iran. Let's take a look.
Once we secure the border, make it more difficult for them to make money, it's going to become violent. You're going to see violence on the border, and it's unfortunate, but we know it's coming. Border Patrol is prepared. It's great to have the military on the southern border. They're prepared. It'd be a bad move on their part to harm any Border Patrol agent or soldier, because I think President Trump will reply with great force. And I think he has the capability of wiping these cartels off the face of the earth if they harm our soldiers or Border Patrol agents. So, word of advice, I wouldn't go there.
Another person using the obliteration language.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Iran. We're threatening everybody all over the place. Everybody's being threatened. You know, there's no reason for this. What do you think? Like the cartels are going to attack the military? But that's also their justification for using the military on the border. This is what it is. He also threatened to arrest the governor of New Jersey this week. And he actually may arrest the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, because Murphy said that he was allowing a migrant. I don't know if it's true or not, but he said on some interview that he was allowing a migrant to stay above his garage. It wasn't going to turn him over to ICE. So now Homan is threatening to arrest him for harboring an illegal immigrant. So, and he's threatening mayors and governors around the country. Department of Transportation just issued an order saying that they will withhold funding to states or municipalities, transportation dollars that have already been approved by Congress to go to them. They will withhold that if they don't cooperate with them on deportations. Because the thing is, the deportation numbers are nowhere near what they want. They're not even close. They're basically the same level of deportations that Biden had. There's not much of a difference in the numbers. And so, and by the way, the other funny part is the detention beds are at 109% capacity. So there's no more beds to house any of these migrants, which is why they're trying to send some down to Guantanamo Bay. Yeah. But the other thing is they're having to release them, which is what they spent 4 years criticizing Biden for, is that, you know, you arrest migrants and then you release them with an ankle bracelet. That's exactly what Tom Homan is doing now because they don't have any beds. Well, what was the bipartisan border bill all about? Building more detention facility beds. And Trump didn't want that. So the reason why Homan can't detain a lot of migrants right now and has to let them go on an ankle monitor is because Trump opposed the funding for more beds last summer.
It's also very frustrating that a whole bunch of stuff that Biden set in motion seems to be being undone. Stuff that comes under the heading of the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, that Trump is just like saying, right, we're getting rid of all of that. And so much work went into that. And that must be very disappointing for not just for Joe Biden, but for all of us who were grateful that he had made these huge implementations, especially when it comes to green energy and just trying to, you know, road building and bridge building, the things that Trump just doesn't want to have anything to do with.
When they try to cut off the funding that's going to a lot of Republican communities, right? Which, remember, the majority of Biden's infrastructure bill went to Republican districts.
Yes.
More than Democratic districts.
Well, they needed the help more.
We know Trump would never do, right?
Yeah.
So when Elon Musk halts those projects and cuts off the funding, which I fully expect him to do, we will see, you know, whether some of these Republican politicians who are claiming credit, despite even after voting against it, they were claiming credit for all these projects. So if Musk halts the funding, we'll see how they react. But most likely what Musk will do is only halt the funding that's going to Democratic districts and let the money go out to the Republicans.
Talking of wealth, let's maybe finish on the sovereign wealth fund that Donald Trump has come up with. This idea that he has to, invest public money and try and make a profit for the nation. I don't know. Let's hear him talking about it.
So other countries have sovereign wealth funds, and they're much smaller countries, and they're not the United States. We have tremendous potential in this country, tremendous. You're seeing that's what's happened just in a short period of time. And as an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it. Otherwise, we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund, whatever we make, or if we do a partnership with very wealthy people, a lot of options, but we could put that as an example in the fund, and we have a lot of other things that we could put in the fund. And I think in a short period of time, we'd have one of the biggest funds. And you know, some of them are pretty large, I must tell you. Some of like the Saudi Arabia fund is on the large side, but eventually we'll catch it. But we're going to create a lot of wealth for the fund. And
this is corruption personified. These small countries that he's talking about, they have a budget surplus. The reason they're able to create this sovereign wealth fund in these smaller nations is because they take in more tax dollars than they spend, and what's over they're able to invest for the nation as a whole. That is not the case in the United States.
Yeah, you're talking about there's like 5 countries that have these.
Yeah.
Norway has the biggest one.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia,
Switzerland, I think, has
number
one.
2. Right.
Yeah.
So you're talking about countries that have small populations, big economies per capita,
Yeah.
and lots of natural resources, et cetera. You know, and so they have all these surpluses. So what do they do with the surplus? Well, there's 2 things that they can do. They can hand it out in checks to the people, and Saudi Arabia does some of that. You know, your universal basic income kind of deal, right? That you like, right? So, I mean, you can do that, or you can invest it. And there's a handful of countries that choose to invest it in this wealth fund, and they invest it in companies around the world, et cetera. So the thing is, though, they're taking surplus money, right? We have a massive, massive deficit and a massive national debt. So he's got his Treasury Secretary there and his Commerce Secretary, Bessent and Lutnick. So where are they going to get the money to create this? You're basically just saying we're going to have to borrow more money to create this fund. We're pay interest on what we're borrowing, put it in a fund, and we're going to use some of that money to buy TikTok. Right? I mean, that's what he just said.
Yeah.
I mean, who controls the fund? Where's the money coming from? This is madness. And then who decides who the U.S. government's going to start buying stuff, buying social media companies?
This is what I was thinking about. Who are the brokers for this?
Yeah,
right. Who's going to make the commission?
Who makes
on
the
these
money?
Deals?
Right. It's all his people.
It's all his people.
So you have right now. You have Republicans who were supposed to vote on They were supposed to write their budget, which they haven't been able to pass in over 2 years.
Yeah,
they were supposed to write it up into the budget committee next week. They had meetings. They had a retreat. They've had a number of meetings over the budget, but they don't agree. As that headline just says, they're all fighting. These are the Republicans on the budget committee. They can't. Not the whole Republican House, not the Republican Senate. Just the Republicans on the budget committee can't even agree right now on spending cuts. So you're saying that they are going to approve additional funds, or when we're already having a huge deficit and they're fighting about, or is it just a situation where Trump is just going to grab money that's been approved by Congress for other things like infrastructure projects, grab that and stick it in this fund? See, that might be the way he's going to do it. So I wanted this highlighted. Most Americans paid no attention to this, but I think that this is a major scandal brewing, this sovereign wealth fund, in something that everyone needs to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, that's something that we will pay attention to, and something that we will maybe look at next week. We have to finish, but Ron, I'm thrilled for this opportunity. I'm sorry that we have to meet under such complex and frustrating circumstances, but such is the nature of America when you elect somebody like Donald Trump. There it is. We'll do our best, and we're here for you. And if you want to join us next week, we'll be here again. If you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that later tonight. If you want to watch this show again or share it, please rewind and do so as soon as we've finished. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Okay, see you next week.